He wasn't loud. He wasn't demanding. He wasn't even trying to be noticed. But within 10 minutes of takeoff, the entire plane would know his face. And before landing, someone's career would end. If you're drawn to stories that reveal the truth beneath the surface, subscribe to Emotional Storytelling, because this is where hidden identities come to light. The cabin lights dimmed as the plane climbed through thick clouds. Row 14, seat B. He adjusted his jacket slightly and exhaled slowly. Calm, observant, unbothered. A simple navy suit. No flashy watch, no visible status symbols. Just presence. The kind of presence that doesn't demand attention, but commands it anyway. Claire Donovan noticed him the moment he boarded. She couldn't explain why, but something about him unsettled her. Maybe it was the way he walked down the aisle without looking for approval. Maybe it was the way he made direct eye contact without flinching. Or maybe it was something she didn't want to admit. She checked the manifest again. Seat 14B, business class. She looked at him once more, then she walked toward him. "Excuse me," she said sharply. He looked up, polite. "Yes? May I see your boarding pass?" "Of course." He handed it over calmly. She studied it longer than necessary. Her jaw tightened. "This is business class." "Yes," he replied gently. "That's correct." Her voice dropped. "Did someone move you here?" "No." "You upgraded at the gate?" "Yes." She stared at him. Not at the ticket, at him. Passengers nearby started sensing tension. She crossed her arms. "This seat is reserved for premium travelers." The words were subtle, but loaded. A businessman across the aisle glanced up. The man in 14B didn't react. "I understand," he said calmly. "That's why I purchased it." Her eyes narrowed. "You people always have an answer." The sentence sliced through the cabin. Silence followed instantly. A woman in 13C froze mid-sip. A phone appeared discreetly from behind a magazine. He inhaled slowly. "Could you clarify what you mean by that?" he asked, voice steady. Claire leaned closer. "I mean that this section has rules." He held her gaze. "I follow rules." Her patience cracked. "Stand up!" The command was louder than necessary. Heads turned fully now. He stood slowly. Not defensive, not aggressive, just controlled. She stepped closer. "You think you can just sit wherever you want?" "I'm sitting where my ticket says." Her hand grabbed his jacket. Gasps erupted. "You people think confidence makes you belong here." The atmosphere changed instantly. Not just tension, division. Passengers began whispering. "That's not right." Maybe he's lying. Why would she react like that? The man remained calm. "Please remove your hand," he said quietly. She tightened her grip. "You're not intimidating me." "I'm not trying to." The calmness unsettled her more than anger would have. She stepped back abruptly and pressed the service intercom. "Captain, I need assistance." The word assistance echoed across the cabin. Eyes locked onto 14B, phones lifted openly now. The narrative had already begun forming in people's minds. Suspicious passenger, flight attendant protecting the cabin, another confrontation at 30,000 feet. The plane climbed higher, but inside, pressure was building fast. Claire stepped into the aisle again. "Sir, you will move to economy until we verify your identity." He tilted his head slightly. "Verify what exactly?" "Your eligibility for this seat." A few passengers murmured in disbelief. A woman 2 rows back spoke quietly. "His ticket looks valid." Claire ignored her. "Move." The man glanced around the cabin, dozens of eyes watching, judging, recording. He slowly picked up his bag and walked toward the back of the plane. No resistance, no raised voice, just silence. And sometimes, silence is more powerful than protest. 10 minutes later, something unexpected happened. A message appeared on the cockpit display. Priority alert. The captain's expression changed instantly. He reread the message twice, then looked at his first officer. That can't be right. The co-pilot swallowed. It says verified. Triple verified. The captain stood. I'm going back there. The cabin quieted as the captain himself walked down the aisle. Passengers straightened, phones refocused. Claire stood confidently near the galley. Yes, Captain? He didn't answer her immediately. Instead, he walked past her, all the way to the back of the plane, where the man now sat quietly in a middle economy seat. The captain stopped, and his tone shifted completely. Mr. Kingston, he said respectfully. The man looked up calmly. Yes. The entire cabin leaned forward. The captain straightened. I sincerely apologize. Silence exploded across the plane. Claire's stomach dropped. Sir, she whispered. The captain turned slowly. Claire, do you know who this is? Her face paled. No. The captain's voice was steady. This is James Kingston. Pause. He finalized the acquisition of this airline 3 weeks ago. A collective gasp rippled across every row. Phones froze mid-recording. Claire felt the ground disappear beneath her. The captain continued. He is now the majority owner. Every eye turned toward the man in economy. James Kingston stood slowly. Still calm. Still composed. He brushed off his jacket lightly. I prefer to travel without announcements, he said quietly. The cabin was dead silent. No one whispered now. No one moved. Because the narrative had just shattered. And nothing creates tension like realizing you were completely wrong. Claire's voice trembled. I didn't know. He looked at her, not with anger, with clarity. I know. And somehow, that felt worse. But what no one on that plane knew yet was that he hadn't just boarded randomly. He had chosen this exact flight, chosen this exact seat, for a reason. And before landing, that reason would become very clear. Silence held the cabin hostage. No one spoke. No one moved. Even the engines felt quieter, as if the aircraft itself had paused to absorb what had just been said. Majority owner. The words echoed inside every passenger's mind. Claire Donovan felt heat rush to her face. Her hands trembled slightly, though she tried to hide it. I didn't know, she repeated. James Kingston adjusted his jacket calmly. I know, he said again. No anger, no sarcasm, just calm certainty. And that calm felt heavier than shouting ever could. Passengers stared openly now. The man they had watched being moved to economy wasn't just another traveler. He was the man who owned the plane they were sitting on. A woman near the window whispered, "Oh my God!" The captain stepped aside respectfully. "Sir, please return to your original seat." James glanced briefly toward seat 14B, then toward Claire, then toward the rest of the cabin. He hesitated, and that hesitation created tension, because everyone wondered the same thing. Would he make a scene? Would he fire her immediately? Would he demand accountability right now? Instead, he asked a quiet question. "May I ask why you believed I didn't belong there?" Claire swallowed. The cabin leaned in. She began. Her voice cracked. "I thought the system flagged you." He nodded slowly. "Yes." And she hesitated. "And?" "I trusted my instinct." He studied her for a moment, not judging, understanding. "And what did your instinct tell you?" he asked gently. The question hung in the air. She couldn't answer, because the truth felt too heavy to say aloud. The captain shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, perhaps we can discuss this privately." James raised a hand slightly. "No," he said softly. "This moment matters. Passengers straightened unconsciously, because suddenly the flight wasn't just transportation, it was something else, a lesson unfolding in real time. James walked back toward business class. Every step felt amplified, phones recorded openly now. Seat 14B waited for him like a silent witness. He sat down slowly. Claire remained standing beside him, unsure whether to stay or leave. "You believed you were protecting passengers," he said calmly. "Yes." "And that belief made you confident enough to ignore evidence?" She hesitated. "Yes." A ripple of reaction moved through nearby rows. He nodded thoughtfully. "That's important?" She looked confused. "You're not angry?" He leaned back slightly. "I didn't board this flight expecting comfort." Her brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" He looked around the cabin briefly before answering. "I chose this flight." The sentence changed everything. "You chose it?" she whispered. "Yes." "For what reason?" He paused, and the pause built anticipation. "Because we've received dozens of reports about passengers feeling profiled in premium cabins." A murmur spread. Passengers exchanged looks. Claire's stomach tightened. "I travel anonymously to understand what data reports cannot show." The truth landed heavily. He wasn't just traveling, he was observing, testing, listening. Claire felt a wave of realization crash into her. "You were testing us?" "I was experiencing the airline as a passenger," he corrected gently. The distinction mattered. A man across the aisle leaned forward. "So you knew this might happen?" James smiled faintly. "I hoped it wouldn't." The honesty disarmed the tension. Claire lowered herself slowly into the empty aisle seat. "I embarrassed you," she said quietly. "You challenged me," he replied. And that revealed something important. She shook her head. "I crossed a line." "Yes." The word was soft, but clear. No avoidance, no sugarcoating. And strangely, that honesty felt fair. Passengers listened intently, because the situation had transformed from confrontation into reflection. A woman 2 rows back spoke quietly. "I thought she was protecting us," she admitted. Another passenger added, "I thought he didn't belong here too." The admissions spread slowly. Not accusations, acknowledgments. James listened without interruption. "That's why I travel like this," he said, "to understand what systems cannot measure." Claire looked at him again. "Are you going to fire me?" The question cut through the cabin. Everyone waited. He didn't answer immediately. He looked out the window, clouds stretching endlessly beneath them. Then, back at her. "I'm going to ask you a different question." She waited. "If you could relive that moment, what would you do differently?" She exhaled slowly. "I would have asked questions instead of making assumptions," he nodded. "That's all any of us can learn." The tension softened slightly, but something deeper was still building, because passengers sensed that the real turning point had not yet arrived. And when it did, it wouldn't just change Claire. It would change how everyone on that flight saw themselves. The plane moved through the sky with quiet certainty. But inside the cabin, nothing felt ordinary anymore. Passengers no longer pretended not to listen. The earlier tension had transformed into something deeper: reflection, discomfort, curiosity. James Kingston sat in seat 14B, relaxed but present, as if every detail still mattered to him. Claire remained beside him for a moment longer before standing. Her movements were slower now, more thoughtful. She wasn't just a flight attendant completing a shift anymore. She was someone confronting herself. "I want to do better," she said quietly. He looked up. "That's all anyone can ask." She nodded, swallowing hard. Then she walked back down the aisle, posture different, less rigid, more grounded. The cabin buzzed softly with whispered conversations. A man in row 13 leaned toward his partner. "I honestly thought he didn't belong up here," he admitted. His partner nodded slowly. "I did too." Another passenger across the aisle added, "I think we all did." The words weren't loud, but they carried weight. Because honesty, when spoken openly, changes the room. James listened without interrupting, without correcting, without judging. Service resumed. Coffee poured. Meals delivered. But every interaction felt more careful now, more human. Claire stopped at a young woman's seat. "Can I get you anything else?" The passenger hesitated. Thank you for handling that the way you did." Claire blinked, surprised. "I didn't handle it well." "You stayed," the woman said gently. "That counts." Claire nodded slowly. Small moments, small steps. Halfway through the flight, turbulence shook the cabin briefly. Passengers grabbed armrests instinctively. A child cried. Claire moved quickly, checking seatbelts, offering reassurance. James watched quietly. He noticed how she spoke softer now, how she made eye contact, how she listened. Growth rarely looks dramatic. Sometimes it's simply choosing differently the next time. The captain's voice came over the intercom. "We've begun our descent." Passengers adjusted their seats. The journey was almost over. But the feeling inside the cabin suggested something unfinished. James pressed the call button gently. Claire approached. "Yes?" "I have one request," he said. She straightened slightly. "Of course. When we land, don't announce who I am." Her eyes widened. "But I didn't come here for recognition," he said calmly. "I came for understanding." She nodded slowly. "I understand. And one more thing." "Yes?" "Write down everything you felt today, not just what happened, what you learned." She hesitated. "You think that matters?" "I know it does." The plane touched down smoothly. Applause broke out softly, a rare moment of shared relief. Passengers stood, collecting bags, but many lingered near row 14. Some nodded respectfully toward James. Others offered small smiles. No one asked for photos. No one demanded attention. It wasn't that kind of moment. Claire stood at the exit door. Routine again. "Thank you for flying with us," she said to each passenger. But when James reached her, time slowed slightly. "I meant what I said," she told him quietly. "I will do better." He smiled gently. "I believe you." She hesitated. "Why didn't you reveal who you were sooner?" He paused. "Because people treat titles differently than people." The answer stayed with her. He stepped off the plane, just another passenger walking into the terminal. But the cabin felt different after he left. Not quieter, stronger. Because something had shifted, not just for Claire, but for everyone who witnessed the moment. And long after the plane emptied, one question lingered. How many times do we decide who belongs before we know who they truly are?